everyone. Welcome to our first recorded session on lecture for Modular 7 for sections. So what I'm going to do is toggle back and forth. So you'll see my face a little bit more animated when I'm trying to make a point. And I'm going to go to my PowerPoint presentation and we're going to go back and forth and kind of walk you through one of these multi-view drawings called a section. So let's get started, shall we? So right now, this is our next little section here. We're going to go to the next phase. We are going to talk about some of this vocabulary. These are some of the things that we have seen in the past. And you've got, your plan view drawings, section drawings, interior elevations. We sure know what those are. What are internal spaces? Some of the different kinds of vertical planes, spatial cues. These are just different little verbiage that we're going to walk you through and as we go through this presentation. So let's get started. So we are going to review mainly some plan drawings. We know all about plan drawings, right? Section drawings and defining the cut, the section cut. So that's important. Okay, so basically right now, we have done all different types of drawings, right? We have done our plan views, our reflective ceiling plans, our elevations. You've also done exterior elevations and you have done interior elevations. Now we're about to bring exterior elevations, interior elevations together. And like I said, we're going to do a section of the house. It's like slicing the house in half or like a slice of cake. You get to see the layers. So not only like last week we did an exterior elevation, you saw just the exterior walls. The week before we did the interior elevations. You saw an elevation that went from wall to wall, but you didn't slice through the walls and see into the next room. Well, that's what we're going to kind of unravel on this journey today. So we know about multi-view drawings, right? The orthographic projection, you guys, we all worked on that. A multi-view drawing is taking a floor plan of plan drawing and horizontally cutting it around 4 feet. Remember, we did our floor plans and they're very scalable. Normally they're in 1/4 inch, right? And they require various line weights. We use the darkest line weights on the outside. And then as we work our way into a multi-view drawing, the things that are less prominent get lower line weights. We talked about this. Well, it's exceptionally true in a section. The item you're cutting through that's solid needs to have a very dark line. So as we go through that, it's kind of like when we go into a section, it's kind of like cutting through this bell pepper, you see. Now you're not just seeing the outside of the bell pepper. You're not seeing just the interior from this shell to shell. You're actually seeing the wall, the thickness of it. And that's what we're going to do with our home. And this is what we call a multi-view drawing, a section drawing. Okay. We call them also the building. We call this a building section because this is of a building. And it reveals a lot of things when we cut something in half. It gives you the idea of scale, the vertical elements and characteristics of the interior space. As they cut through this house, now you're seeing like an X-ray vision of what it would look inside. You're seeing the ceiling heights, you're seeing the wall thicknesses, it defines the windows and so forth. So sections are typically made vertically. Now, when we do the sections horizontally, that's what we had back when we had our floor plan, right? That was a horizontal cut. But when we're doing a building section, we are cutting through them vertically. Just like that slice of pie or slice of cake, if I were to cut the cake this way, you would only just see a circle. whether it be frosting or just a circle of cake. But when you cut it this way, vertically, you're seeing all the layers. So that is what it's like when we're going to do this building. And that's called a building section. And it is part of the multi-view family. Next, we're going to talk a little bit about this detail is that sections assume parallel positions to the picture plane. So true characteristics, they show size and proportion, and they provide dimensional relational and relationships. So that's just fancy for saying that when we do a section, everything is scalable. It's to its true size and true proportion, just like any of the other multi-view drawings. But really doing a section gives a person that is almost standing far away an ability to see, the entire whole picture. And it's a rare point of view. We don't get to see it in real life that way unless we were Superman and had X-ray vision. But that's what sections allow us to do, to see the entire design. And now we want to kind of, take a look at some of the characteristics that they offer as sections. So when you look at this design of the section, we emphasize what is solid and the void or the negative space. So when we cut it in half, like slicing into that cake, you see the flooring, you see the walls, the roof, and the entire structure. All the vertical dimensions and are all interrelated. Look at how this patio cover, from the outside here, you can't see that. It's not until you take a slice, you don't know that it has this open beam there, or even that back door. And all of this depends on where you cut this house in half. Each different location will offer a different viewpoint. So if I cut a house in the front of the house or back of the house or east way or cross way, every single way I cut that house or that structure is going to give me a different viewpoint. So that's why we have to make really careful, make sure when we do our cuts through a section that we know exactly what we want to see and what we want to draft. And that takes a little skill and little eye to really pay attention to what that is going to be interpreted on a multi-view drawing. So when we make that cut slice through there, we want to see some internal parts here and see how it relates. And then the section also in the elevation, the section reveals elevated objects. So it really kind of shows you some orientation to what is happening inside. When they cut that plane right here, we're really able to kind of get the full view of the space. So as you kind of see it back here and what's happening, also it cuts through windows. It might show glass. It might show fixtures, cabinetry. So this really gives us an idea of what's going on in the exterior as well as the interior. Now, defining a section cut. The section cut symbols. How do we know if it's a section cut? Now, remember, when we went to our floor plans, we added those elevation marks. What did that define? That defined what view we were looking at on the floor plan. So if I wanted the back kitchen wall, I made an elevation mark pointing to that back kitchen wall. When I wanted the sink wall, I turned that arrow and showed where it was going to, the direction that I wanted that elevation. The section mark is very important because that shares where you're cutting that house through and what is the view that you want to see. So when we look at these little indicators, these tell us how you're going to cut through this section. when we are pointing the little indicators or the section cut indicators, and any little arrow that's pointing that way, that means that we are looking over at this side. If you point and put a cut section through this way with the little point indicators looking this way, we're looking over here at this side of the structure. And we use different kinds of little symbols. You may put a line with an arrow. You may say a line with a thick tick mark, or you may even see a line with a little, triangle. Often you may even see like an elevation mark, but it has this line across it. So right here, we're looking at that section mark that goes right across the home, and we are going to see this back wall. So as we cut through the plane of the house, it matters whether the arrows are going up or down or this way or that way. It all makes a difference on what view we're going to see, right? So that indicator is extremely important. Now, and that's something we're going to put on our own floor plan. So we are knowing what section we're looking at. Now, here is a very good indication. It's very similar to what we are going to be doing and experiencing in ours. It's a similar floor plan. So this gives us what we call spatial depth or cues. And this orthographic projection, there's some, rules. We can use orthographic projection from our floor plan to create the side walls. But in our case, we were lucky enough to do the exterior elevation of this space. So we already have the outline of our section. Now, remember, we talked about weights. It is great when you have the heavy weight lines are the profile and boundaries. So your darkest lines are going on the outside. The item that you slice through that's solid, those solid walls, are going to have the heaviest, darkest line around a section. Also, what identifies a section is this other element. It's these little footings and the actual, what we call slab of the actual structure. So when you start to see little footings and you start to see the ground below, that really indicates a section drawing. Now, we have our heavyweight lines that are the profile lines that really show the structure, our intermediate weight lines. Now, these are object lines and edges and a little bit smaller doors and so forth. And then the lightweight lines are surfaces and textures. Maybe you have a little brick pattern here or some little textural quality on the wall. So you use those for the lighter white lines. So here we go. We apply these rules here, as you can see, and this will give the drawing some depth. It'll give it some character. And so you see that the dark lines are outlining this whole space. These are little footings. Now this house is elevated and it's actually raised above the floor, but these are called footings. See over here? And they really show that this house, what the house is, the footings allow the house to be stable. And all homes have footings and a foundation. So that's how you sew. Now, when you have these heavier lines, it gives it the nearest view plane. It makes it come towards you, makes it look nearer. The intermediate line weights, kind of give it a middle depth. And then the light textures kind of make things look distant. So line weights, once again, are extremely critical. So I know we talk about line weights, but I just really can't emphasize this enough. When we get into the section of the demo that I'm going to do and your drawing, you're really going to see where that matters and how it makes a difference in the drawing and the presentation. So like I said, once again, it's all about line weights and line qualities. And so Additional lines. Now, we also sometimes use additional lines in sections. You are familiar with a broken line or a dashed line, used for maybe something hidden or phantom lines. Let's say it's an eating counter or the upper cabinets have a dashed line, shows it's hidden. We use very heavy lines for the base or the floor or the section line. So see here, there's a very thick line here, and this indicates the actually ground. So that's very reserved. It's extremely thick and it gives us grounding. And then additional lines like a light broken line could be something distant or a landscape. Sometimes we actually kind of fade those lines away. Now, we talked about that word pashane. Remember the word pashane. You did it for your floor plans, reflective ceiling plans, and any of the walls that were solid needed to be grayed out in the back. Remember, we talked about that. Some of you have gotten drawings back where I said fill in, and that's called pashane. It's a graying in your walls, and it indicates solidness. So we always want to do that with the section. So the outside walls, the footings are paché. So there's that word again. Um, so you use figure ground to define relationships. That's that solid matter. That's this. See here, this is a very dark gray per shade. This is showing a very heavy structural. You provide paché at the cut profiles. So everything that's cut here, just like your walls on your floor plan, they are all pachéed, and that is showing solid thicknesses. It's important that you do that on all your cut profiles. And you observe the contrast that requirements for paché. So it's important because the paché gives contrast. And sometimes we do them very dark. There are other times we might do a lighter gray or different values to kind of indicate a different material. So pashane, once again, gives us some spatial depth and it makes the item appear solid. And that is our goal. Finally wrapping up here. So also sections give us a scaled indication, and so one way that we can kind of create a more relatable drawing, often what we do is we will add people or something that's relatable, a tree or a car next to these items or sections to give us a reference. Like, how high are these ceilings? Well, there's a human being, and it helps us to show the scale of the item. And architects do this. You will learn this in various other drawing platforms at our school. Perspectives, Rapid Viz. We, often we put these as scale references, so people and that sort of thing. So you may see those in some of these sections. So what's the most important thing that we could relate to? Of course, is the human figure. So we often will put humans next to one of the scaled drawings, and this will help us to really get an idea of how large things are and how they are in proportion. Now, larger the scale, the greater the amount of detail. We talked about this with our other drawings, and we can really get in detail. But when it's a smaller scale drawing like a 1/4 inch or 1/8 inch, you really can't get in detail. Now, human figures, this anthropomorphic scale to drawing, that is once again a way that we can show scale. And once again, the larger the scale the drawings, describe the lower the way the ability we have, to describe more construction details. So I know that as we go through this drawing, and this is our reference drawing right here, as we go through this is our project right here. You see the heavy darkness of the walls. We see the detail of what's going on in the interior. And we're using some of these wonderful textures that you all drafted. This one represents earth. The little speckles above right here represent concrete. And this is brick. The fireplace, as you see, is brick. And you drew all these. And now we actually get to use them in this drawing. And this is the section of your home. We've been working with this. We know this house. You already did the exterior elevation. So this is going to be a lot easier for you to translate because you have the outline footprint. And we can basically, we take that outline and we move inward. And I'll go through that when we discuss this a little more in detail. So just to give a recap, our sections are basically a multi-plane drawing that we cut and slice vertically. We have to make sure that all of our walls are shade or filled in and are the darkest lines, that the ground floor are very dark and heavy. A lot of indications of a real section, a building section, show footings such as these, show earth, maybe a concrete platform that really is an X-ray view, and that tells us this is a building section. We also get to see architectural features like the beams that are in this house, the cabinetry, the details of the fireplace. Now, of course, a section is only as relevant as where you cut it. So where we cut our floor plan shows this view. If we were to cut our floor plan in different locations, we would be looking at a totally different view. But as it were, when we do cut our floor plan, and I'll show you where the floor plan is cut and how we place that section marker that we talked about earlier, right? It's a line with little points or arrows showing the direction of the cut. Where we locate that on the house and on our floor plan will show this view. So I'm looking forward. I know you guys can do this. This is just an extension of the multi-view drawings of elevations. You did interior elevations, exterior elevations. Now we're doing a building section, which kind of just combines them all together. Just like building a house, one thing at a time. Now, we're going to go ahead and take a look at a video of a woman drawing a section using orthographic projection. We've done this before, and you guys did it with a little house on one of the assignments I gave you. I know that it's kind of long and slow, but I may interject in between just to make my point across. So you understand the concept of orthographic projection and how to create sections and what you're really looking at. We may approach this project a little bit different since we actually have the outline from our exterior elevations. It's going to be easier for you guys, but I still want you to understand the concept of how to create a section from a floor plan. So let me see if I can get to this and get on this little video, and maybe allow me. No. I thought it would let me link it on. I'm not sure what's going on here. I think I'll have to maybe copy that and get it going. So please be patient with me as I go onto YouTube and just grab that video, and let me get it on there, right there. And let's see if we can